Hey, what's up again, everybody? It's Robert, 184, 2Rs2Bs, GundamReviews.net, and I can't believe how fast time flies when you're having fun, because it is tonight, the penultimate episode of Gundam Age, episode 48, only one more to go, and I've just got to kick things off by saying, flashing back to all the reaction when Gundam Age came out, and all those character designs, I have to say that after watching this episode 48, if nothing is going to change some people's minds about this show, then I don't know what will. This is Gundam in the truest tradition, so let's get on to the body count. This week it's back to the old style chronological review because there are just too many moments that are going to end up somewhere on TV tropes under crowning moments of too many bests in terms of MS characters and moments, so let's just get right to it. I really like that they kicked off the episode with a nod to the fact that Sarek committed the ultimate heroic sacrifice last week, ordering his girlfriend to kill him because that was what they needed to do to win the war. And we also got to see the reaction of the rest of the Sarek team, including Albright. More Albright is definitely not a bad thing, as you are going to see. And you're going to notice a lot of people hanging out in the background today, whether it's in flashbacks, ghosts, or just there reacting. It's a great way to bring us a sort of a reminder of all the characters that we've seen along the way. But at the beginning, Zeheart kicked things off by showing his resolve. He had to do it with the help of the old blue-haired dude in the yellow Dorado, and we also had Dole of Magicians 8 and Dezel, the bad guy from the first arc, and they basically sat there and he decided that I will do whatever it takes. Zeheart's arc, going from a cool kid who was sort of happy to be accepted at school in the Mobile Suit Club to full-on villain and totally genocidal one at that, is complete, as you're going to be seeing. Because if you thought his friend zoning of Flam Nara or subordinate zoning of her was pretty bad, well, how about sending her off to her death with some great background music in there? His plan is pretty simple. We're going to wipe out the Diva, and I don't care who's in our way, friend or foe, and your job is to get the Gundams there so that they can be obliterated once and for all. To which Flam looks at his steely eyes and agrees, and we also have Rail Light saying to her, don't you know what you're getting into? And yes, she does, but she's now willing to do it for Zeheart. Which leads us to our first fight here as we get to see Flam taking on Kyo, even though Kyo in the Age FX was not fully bursted out. However, nonetheless, we got to see Asum jump in, save his son, as Flam was certainly had him a bit on the ropes, I suppose. But nonetheless, the bit of a surprise had to be that we were going to have one more addition, because in addition to Asum fighting Flam, well, let's see if I can get them all on the turntable here. No. But you get the idea, it's the Giraga Kai, which now has a name. In yellow, Rail Light comes in, and even though Zeheart doesn't love her, obviously, Rail Light does, and he comes in to save her as best he can at the moment. And while Asum's having nothing to do with the X-Rounder, ghosts and bodies flying around at each other, we get to see Kyo and Flit both notice that something is very, very wrong in the form of another laser that shouldn't be able to be fired this quick, but they know that the target is the Diva, and all of a sudden they decide to use this to their advantage. Nonetheless, I can't believe that we're having all of this stuff happening before the commercial, because there's so much more to come. As we get to see Old Man Flit head out for one more shot, as he's got both the full armor slapped on Alex style and the old red thing that he had from the second generation in the Gransa, and it was sort of cool that he said Deru instead of Iku. And then we get to see something pretty cool as we know that the Diva is going to be under attack, and all of a sudden they're ordered to evacuate. They're going to draw in the fire from Zeheart. And what do? Well, they decloak Asum's pirate ship underneath. Everybody heads out to the cargo bay or whatever, the launching dock, and they all space jump down below. And this is just a great excuse for everybody to salute, and more importantly, as you realize just how much action the Diva has seen over these 3 generations, starting with the first one with a great scene from the mess hall. Wolf and Flit were there, and of course this is the young Flit, and we also got to see Largan, Captain Grudek Milays, and everybody else. As well as the crews from the 2nd and 3rd generation, including the recently departed Sarek, and they threw in a cameo of the old Age 3, which seems to have been forgotten since the Age FX generation began. But the past is soon forgotten as we move on to the future, as we get a great scene where Albright Lorraine, like I said, 2nd or 3rd generation, the more we see of him the better, as he kills Rail Light, who is doing his best to keep Flam Nara safe. He can't believe that his Giraga Kai has lost, and Albright shows that he's a great warrior along the way. Before we're led to believe that Jonathan has a chance against Flam Nara and her Fawn Farsha, and nonetheless she says she will not be losing to Azako, as she used her weapons incredibly well in these last couple episodes and end up slicing right through his body. As a furious Albright, even though they know they have their orders to evacuate, rushes in, and as he's able to drive his blade down into her head, even as she holds it off long enough for us just to have those all-important flashbacks. As Zehart with cool authority orders them to fire the laser again regardless of who's in the way, friend or foe. With one of the first casualties being Xanard, he of the gorilla, you figure that his surviving at Kyo's hands the other day may have had some implications on the Earth Federation or on Zehart, but instead Zehart showed that even if he's crossed, he has no problem crossing friend or foes, even though they all should be on the same side. Which leads us to a well-deserved flashback, because obviously O'Bright did not die fighting Flam, but was alive long enough to see the laser come, and flashback to all the times that he had on the Diva and his old fiancée, Lemmy Lou, from the second generation. And Flam and Zehart reach out via their X-Rounder abilities, and she quickly dispels the notion that this cell has anything to do with her brother Dole, so get him out of the picture, as they both decide that Eden is the way they have to do it, and she was just happy to be by his side, and especially fighting there, and that she'll do anything for the cost, and this just drives Zehart even more in his desire to create the Eden that Ezelkant has stuck in his head. And as people, potential lovers, and sworn enemies are blowing up all around them, including the Diva, we get to see the best use of a transformation of a Gundam I think we've seen in a long time, as we get to see the Strider form get the rest of the Gundams the heck out of Dodge. With word of the survival of all three Gundams sending Zehart off the deep end and into full villainous territory, as all of the ghosts this time instead of being supportive are around him. He can't believe it, he abandons his post and forgets about just being a commander, and he decides to head out in the Legolas and go and deal with these troublesome brats once and for all. And even though he starts by taking on Kyo, who should really be taking on the final big bad of the series, there never should have been any doubt as to who his final opponent was going to be. Asum Asano shows us the Age 2 Darkhound and its full abilities. He used pretty much every trick that he had, and as a pirate, he's got a lot of them, as he just absolutely dismantled the Legolas one limb at a time, smashing his grappling hooks into the face and ripping open the cockpit, until a bloodied and bruised Zehart looks up with blood on his hands at his old friend/enemy frenemy. And to top off all of the other great flashbacks we saw in this episode, the old days building mobile suits together with Romary and all the boys back in their school, we just got to see Zehart still remember a bit of who he was, despite the fact that he's obviously been pushed into doing things that at the beginning he definitely would not have been. Asum and him get to have a moment as they both somewhat redeem himself, and in the end, he does it fully by kicking away Asum's Age 2 Darkhound, and as he's going to blow up, he's going to do it alone and not take down his old friend for just a chilling and touching moment to the end of the episode, which leads us into the music, which I've never found more fitting. For overall, what I thought had to be just an absolute excellent end to this episode, and of course, we're getting near the end of the series. It doesn't get any closer as we've got the final episode next Sunday night. But just look at the body count. We've got 6 people: Rail, Jonathan, O'Bright, Flam, Xanard, and Zehart himself. I didn't expect that, really, not to mention Sarek, Dean, and Derek not too long ago. When you think about this, there were so many different things that we've got to see coming up. I suppose the final bad guy now, I figured there were going to be 3 dance partners for them all to fight with some combination of Xanard, Ezelkant, and Zehart. Instead, we got to see Zehart bite it in the end, which means he's not going to be the climax villain. Instead, it's going to be Ezelkant, probably in a younger cloned body or something out like that, which is going to be cool to see. Kyo will obviously have to deal with him, as Ezelkant became somewhat of a father figure during his time on Mars. You've got to wonder about how Flit's going to do in the old Age 1 full armor and whether he's going to have enough firepower to make it through. And anyway, it's going to be nothing but speculation for the next week. Nonetheless, we've seen a lot of bodies drop along the way over these last few episodes. Touching moments all over the place, great use of flashbacks, some excellent animation, great background music, and people and their character arcs, whether it was Flam and Zehart and their unrequited love. We also got to see Sarek's team take care of their revenge for him. We got to see Rail Light do what he could, as ineffectual as it turned out to be. And most importantly, we're going to have all 3 Gundams ready to go for the final battle. So you can guess that I was a big fan of this episode, and I'd love to hear your opinion, both about this video, of course, and more importantly about the episode itself, especially people who weren't too keen on Gundam Age at the beginning, based on the character designs or whatever else. If you watched episode 48, it must have done something to bring you in. I'd love to hear your take on this episode. I think, for me, in the grandest kill-em-all Tomino style, there's certainly not going to have a lot of people left to stand. The 3 generations lets you have more of these very significant deaths as we go. but to see Zahart killed off so early, certainly a surprise. And even when Gundam has had X number of series and so many tropes that whether they're named after it or not, nonetheless, it's just great to see that they can still surprise you, and all we're going to have is that one-eyed monster Sid at the end, and Kyo is obviously going to have to fight him, and I can't wait to see the fate of everybody else. Anyway, everybody, it's been lots of fun. Stick around for the final episode next Sunday. And of course, I'd love to hear your reactions to this and everything else, and we'll see you next time. Gundam.tk, news, reviews, and everything else you can use. Thank you, Kill 'em all Tomino. You've certainly set a good precedent. Tell you what, Kyo, Asim's already had his moment, so why don't I take on the old man Ezokant, and you take on the young.